The Lovers, the hidden psychology of love and choice. When you look at the Lovers card in the tarot, it's easy to get caught in the surface image, a man between two women, an angel above, and a dreamy background. But there's fire behind that softness. This isn't just about romance. It's the turning point in someone's inner story, where desire meets destiny, and the ego starts to whisper, "Maybe I can choose for myself now." In that moment, we're not just looking at love. We're witnessing the birth of spiritual responsibility, where free will becomes more than a privilege. It becomes a burden of the soul. And believe me, most people don't even notice when that shift happens in real life. Imagine this card as a scene out of your own life, maybe a moment where you had to choose between comfort and growth, between what was safe and what pulled your soul forward. That's what's really going on here. The Lover's archetype throws you into the fire of individuation, asking you to make a choice that separates you from the herd. One woman whispers motherly safety, the other holds the wild mirror of your anima, chaotic, soul-stirring, impossible to ignore. And you're the one torn between instinct and awakening, craving both the known and the unknown. This archetype is loaded with eros, that wild spark that turns decisions into spiritual initiations. What might look like just another love triangle is actually the soul's initiation ritual. The triangle here isn't about drama, it's geometry for transformation. It's where unconscious impulses, ego desires, and the call of destiny all crash into one another. The Lover's card holds that chaos in place so we can see it, and if we're brave enough, feel it without running. It's a symbolic battlefield where Cupid doesn't ask permission before shooting his arrows. This card reveals how duality works its mischief. We think we're choosing between this or that, but what we're really facing is our own unconscious being mirrored through others. That's why love feels so spiritual and dangerous all at once. It's not about finding the right one. It's about recognizing the internal split we keep projecting outward. What if, instead of picking one side, you learn to sit in the discomfort of the in-between? That's where the real awakening begins, and the Lovers is daring you to do exactly that. In practical terms, this card can pop up in life as a relationship crossroads, a career pivot, or even a deep existential moment that seems to come out of nowhere. Think of someone leaving a secure job to follow a calling, irrational, scary, but utterly necessary. That's the energy of the Lovers. And what makes it even more challenging is that the choice often isn't logical, it's archetypal. It feels fated, cosmic, like something beyond just you is watching and waiting. And maybe, just maybe, something is. Symbolism of the feminine figures. At the heart of the Lover's card lies a psychological tension that most people feel, but few can name. The two women aren't just characters, they're archetypes pulling at the man's soul from opposite directions. One is the Great Mother, comforting, protective, familiar. The other is the anima, seductive, mysterious, unpredictable. Together, they mirror the core conflict between staying in the womb of the known or venturing into the raw chaos of becoming. This isn't a choice between right and wrong. It's a mythic pull between safety and transformation. In Jungian terms, the maternal figure often represents the mother complex, that part of the psyche clinging to dependence, guilt, and regression. She feeds the ego's need for approval and keeps one tethered to childhood scripts. On the other hand, the anima acts as a soul guide. She stirs the unconscious, bringing dreams, desires, and longings that make no rational sense. When a man meets a woman who triggers his anima, it feels like love, but what's really happening is a collision with his own soul image. That's why it's so disorienting, and why most people confuse it with destiny. This inner split plays out in real life constantly. Think of someone stuck in a relationship that feels nurturing but stagnant, while being haunted by fantasies of a passionate, ungrounded affair. Or someone choosing between a secure job and an artistic calling that barely pays the bills. These aren't just decisions, they're reflections of the inner feminine at war within. That's what tarot reveals so powerfully, not predictions, but patterns. And those patterns are where the real work begins. The feminine figures also represent the dual nature of love itself. One form nurtures the body, the other ignites the soul. But what happens when both archetypes are projected onto actual women? Chaos, projection, obsession. That's when the triangle becomes torment. Learning to recognize the inner source of those pulls is essential. A good starting point? Begin journaling your emotional reactions to others. Notice when someone feels too perfect or too threatening. That's your unconscious speaking. Books like The Sacred Prostitute by Nancy Qualls Corbett or The Heroine's Journey by Maureen Murdoch can help you decode this inner landscape. Ultimately, these two women aren't there to be chosen. They exist to awaken. They force the ego to feel its limitations and point toward a deeper integration. Neither regression nor projection leads to wholeness. And yet, both are necessary stages. The Lover's card isn't saying, pick one. It's whispering, see them both, and what they reflect in you. And once you see that, the real heat starts to rise, because that's when Eros enters the scene. The role of Eros and Cupid. Eros doesn't knock politely. He kicks the door open, sets your heart on fire, and laughs as you try to keep your life in order. He's not about comfort or control. He's the divine chaos that disrupts logic and demands transformation. In the mythic structure behind the Lover's card, Eros or Cupid isn't just a symbol of romantic love. He's a metaphysical force of awakening. He represents the primal matter, the divine fire that burns through repression and brings unconscious desires to the surface. And once he's in play, there's no going back to sleep. Let's talk myth. In the Judgment of Paris, a mortal man is forced to choose the most beautiful goddess, Hera, Athena, or Aphrodite. But it's Aphrodite who bribes him with the promise of love. That choice triggers the Trojan War, proof that Eros doesn't just stir desire, he unleashes fate. Behind Paris's decision was Cupid's arrow. That same dynamic plays out inside each of us. A seemingly small desire, a glance, a craving, a what if, can unravel entire lives, not to destroy but to initiate. It's never just about lust. It's about soul ignition. Eros creates the triangle, the tension of opposites where psychic growth thrives. And let's be honest, that tension is uncomfortable. It shows up when we fall for someone we shouldn't, when we're torn between love and duty, or when we find ourselves consumed by a passion we can't explain. Cupid's arrow isn't about compatibility, it's about combustion. When it hits, you don't just feel attraction, you're invited into a process of alchemy, where desire becomes the fire that tempers the soul. One powerful way to work with this energy consciously is through symbolic reflection. For example, engaging with creative practices like painting, dancing, or dream journaling can help you externalize this inner fire without becoming its hostage. Reading works like Eros and Psyche by Eric Newman or The Art of Loving by Eric Fromm can also offer frameworks to navigate the spiritual meaning of attraction. Because when Cupid strikes, you either burn unconsciously or transmute consciously. And just when you think you've understood the meaning of that fire, something deeper starts to stir. The tension between desire and discipline, passion and principle, becomes more than emotional, it turns spiritual. That's when we enter the battlefield where flesh and spirit collide, and where the soul chooses whether to suffer or awaken. The conflict between spirit and flesh. There's a reason why love stories and spiritual quests always seem to clash. They're built on different currencies. One runs on fire, the other on light. The lover's card throws this duality right in your face. The raw, pulsing desire of the body versus the elevated yearning of the spirit. And let's be real, we're usually caught in the middle, pulled in both directions by forces we barely understand. This isn't just a romantic dilemma. It's a universal conflict, one that defines our emotional, psychological, and spiritual development from the moment we start to desire anything at all. This inner war shows up in the classic triangle. One figure offers sensuality, intoxication, abandon; the other, virtue, transcendence, spiritual order. Sometimes they even appear as the same person at different times, confusing the ego beyond reason. But here's the catch: neither side is wrong. Jung understood that the repression of desire doesn't lead to holiness, it leads to shadow. And indulgence without awareness doesn't lead to freedom, it leads to chaos. The true initiation comes when you can hold both without being consumed by either. You might feel this tension during something as ordinary as a first date. One part of you wants connection, soul depth. Another part wants chemistry, pleasure, a dopamine hit. The conflict isn't a sign you're broken, it's a sign you're human. And if you pause and notice that inner split, you're already ahead of most. Practical tools? Try active imagination. Sit with the two voices in your head like you're moderating a debate between your inner priest and your inner lover. Ask each what they want, then just listen. No judgment, just awareness. This paradox is found everywhere, in religious vows of celibacy, in the tortured artist trope, in the spiritual seeker who secretly longs for touch. It's not about choosing one side forever, but learning to dance between them. Shiva without Shakti is stillness without pulse. Shakti without Shiva is fire without form. What we seek is inner harmony, not moral superiority. When the lover's card appears, it doesn't want you to decide between flesh and spirit. It wants you to see that the fire of desire and the light of the soul are not enemies, they're twin flames. But that realization doesn't come easy. It asks for presence, honesty, and a deep look at what you're really craving beneath the surface. Because often what looks like lust is actually a hunger for union, not just with another person, but with your own fragmented self. And to move toward that wholeness, we'll need a bit of myth to guide us. Mythological parallels and cultural narratives. Myths aren't dusty old stories, they're psychological blueprints wrapped in metaphor. The lover's archetype echoes across countless tales, from Greek mythology to childhood fairy tales. Take the Judgment of Paris, for example. 3 goddesses, 1 golden apple, and a man forced to choose. What looks like a divine beauty contest is actually a mirror of the psychic struggle between anima projections, ego desires, and the pull of destiny. Paris chooses Aphrodite, passion over wisdom and power, and that simple act launches a war. Now tell me that doesn't sound like a modern relationship gone nuclear. We see the same tension in fairy tales. Cinderella torn between ashes and the ball, Snow White asleep, waiting for the prince to awaken her. These aren't just romantic dreams, they're coded messages about the journey from unconscious dependence to soul integration. Cinderella isn't saved by the prince, she's recognized. Snow White's slumber is the ego's inertia before awakening. The witches and stepmothers? Classic representations of the devouring mother archetype, the shadow side of the feminine that resists transformation. And yet, it's through confronting them that the heroine evolves. These stories persist because they mirror what's happening inside us. Every time we face a choice between comfort and growth, every time we're seduced by illusion or haunted by longing, we reenact those mythic scripts. And just like Paris, we often don't know what we're setting in motion when we choose. That's why reading myth isn't just academic, it's spiritual training. Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces or Clarissa Pinkola Estate's Women Who Run with the Wolves can help you see the myth beneath your own life's messiness. Our culture tends to flatten these narratives, turning them into sanitized love stories or power fantasies. But underneath, the archetypes are still alive, still whispering. The masculine caught between anima and mother, the feminine between lover and savior. These figures evolve with us, but their core energy remains. Even in movies today, from The Matrix to Black Swan, we see characters battling inner archetypes under the surface of plot. And when we watch them, we're really watching parts of ourselves play out in symbolic form. So the next time you feel pulled in two directions, or find yourself trapped in a familiar story with a new cast of characters, pause. Ask yourself, what myth am I living? Because until we name the pattern, we repeat it. But once we see it, we get to choose how the story ends or begins. And that's when deeper forces, like alchemy and ancient symbols, begin to reveal the map forward. The alchemical and Jungian perspective. In the language of alchemy and Jungian psychology, the lover's card isn't about choosing a partner. It's about choosing the self. That triangle you see? It's a symbol of tension, transformation, and the fusion of opposites. Just like fire refines metal, inner conflict refines the soul. Jung called this process individuation, the integration of unconscious material into consciousness. Alchemists called it the union of soul and luna. Either way, it's a path paved with paradox. Masculine and feminine, desire and detachment, light and shadow. And the lovers? They stand right at the gateway. Let's break down the geometry for a moment. The triangle with its 3 points represents the dynamic relationship between ego, unconscious, and the higher self. Add to that the number 6, the number of the card, and you get the Star of David, 2 interlocking triangles, symbolizing the union of heaven and earth, spirit and matter. This isn't just pretty symbolism. It's a working model for psychic evolution. Every time we feel torn between two options, what's really being asked is, can you contain the tension long enough for something new to emerge? Think of it like emotional alchemy. You're holding the fire of passion, eros, the pull of security, mother complex, and the whisper of the soul, anima or animus. Most people want relief. They choose quickly, numb out, or rationalize. But the alchemist waits. In daily life, this looks like meditating instead of reacting, journaling through the discomfort, or sitting with the urge to escape. A brilliant companion for this kind of work is Jung's The Red Book or Marie-Louise von Franz's Alchemy, an introduction to the symbolism and the psychology. Alchemy doesn't promise comfort. It promises transformation. The primal matter, your raw instincts, repressed desires, unfinished stories, has to be burned, dissolved, reconfigured. It's messy, it's intimate, and it's sacred. When the lovers show up, they're not handing you a soulmate, they're handing you a mirror and a crucible. Will you use your desire as a doorway to awakening, or as a distraction from your real work? That's the choice. That's the fire. And just when you think you've nailed the symbolism, the world shifts around you. Modern life, with its shifting values and endless distractions, begins to distort these deep patterns. Which brings us to the next twist in the spiral, how culture itself reshapes and often dilutes the sacred meaning behind the triangle. Modern interpretations and cultural shifts. In today's world, the lover's card has been reduced to hashtags and heart emojis. Swipe left, swipe right, and just like that, the sacred triangle turns into entertainment. But here's the problem. When you strip away the archetypal depth, you also lose the spiritual gravity. What used to be a moment of inner initiation becomes just another episode in someone's dating history. The symbolic fire gets watered down, and we start mistaking emotional distraction for soul connection. The triangle isn't gone, it's just playing dress-up in modern clothes. Take the concept of the situationship. It's a perfect example of unresolved inner polarity. No clear choice, no conscious direction, just floating in a fog of passive desire. That's not freedom, it's avoidance. And while modern culture celebrates non-commitment as self-care, Jung would have called it repression in disguise. When the tension between desire and direction is dismissed, the individuation process stalls. The lover's archetype requires conscious engagement, not just scrolling through dopamine loops until something feels right. This dilution shows up in therapy rooms too. People talk about following their heart while ignoring the psychic roots of their patterns. They treat relationship chaos as a personal failure, not as a symbolic invitation to growth. But if you understand the archetype, you can read your own life like a myth. That unresolved love triangle? It's not just bad luck. It's Eros shaking the foundations. That craving for someone who's emotionally unavailable. It might be your own animus trying to wake you up. The signs are everywhere. We just forgot how to read them. To counter this cultural drift, we need to bring back symbolic literacy. Start by tracking the patterns in your relationships, not just what happened, but what got activated. Did you feel abandoned, obsessed, torn? These are archetypal echoes. Reading The Eden Project by James Hollis or Intimate Communion by David Deida can reintroduce you to the symbolic meaning behind attraction. Because love, in its deeper sense, isn't about compatibility. It's about soul ignition and shadow integration. And culture, with all its noise, won't teach you that. But if you begin to notice the myth inside the mess, something shifts. Suddenly, your heartbreaks start to feel less random. Your choices, even your mistakes, start to look like stepping stones. And as this new awareness grows, a deeper question starts to rise. Are you truly choosing, or are you being chosen by forces you barely understand? The illusion of free will and the role of fate. We like to believe we're in charge, that our choices are ours, our paths self-designed. But the lover's card plays a trick here. Look closely, and you'll notice something strange. While the man stands between two women, it's not he who decides. Hovering above is a divine figure, Cupid or an angel, making the call from beyond. That subtle detail reveals a haunting truth, that what we call choice may just be the ego's illusion, while deeper forces shape our lives behind the scenes. Destiny, the unconscious, ancestral patterns, all playing a role we rarely see. Have you ever had the feeling that a decision was made for you, even though you technically made it? That uncanny moment where your lips say, yes, but your gut screams, this is bigger than me? That's the unconscious in motion. Jung believed the unconscious isn't just personal, it's mythic, collective, ancient. So when we find ourselves choosing between lovers, careers, or life paths, we're not starting from zero. We're stepping into archetypal currents, and sometimes those currents pull us harder than reason can resist. This is where fate gets tricky. It doesn't always look like lightning bolts or prophecies. It often shows up as synchronicity, a chance meeting, a dream that won't let go, a repeating pattern you can't escape. In practical terms, journaling synchronicities, recurring emotional triggers, or even intense dreams can help reveal when you're being nudged by something beyond logic. Books like Synchronicity by Jung or The Soul's Code by James Hillman explore how what seems accidental may actually be deeply intentional. But don't get it twisted. This doesn't mean you're powerless. It means your power lies in awareness, not control. Free will isn't about bypassing fate, it's about dancing with it. Think of it like playing jazz with the universe. You've got your instrument, your intention, but the melody is co-created in real time. The Lover's card, in this light, becomes a sacred moment where you realize you're not the only one in the room. The divine is present. The unconscious is speaking. And the question isn't, what do I want? It's what wants to happen through me. And as this realization settles in, another begins to rise. If I'm not fully in charge, then who or what is guiding this story? What inner union is destiny pointing me toward? What opposite am I being asked to embrace, not avoid? The integration of inner opposites and self-realization. At the core of the Lover's card lies the real treasure, not the thrill of romance or the drama of decision, but the union of opposites within. The man's dilemma isn't about the women outside of him. It's about the polarities inside him, ego and soul, desire and discipline, anima and mother complex, shadow and light. The spiritual path isn't about choosing one and discarding the other. It's about learning to hold the tension without collapsing until a deeper integration emerges. That's what Jung called individuation. That's where the real gold is. Integration doesn't mean eliminating desire or silencing doubt. It means recognizing each voice within you as part of the whole. The inner child who craves safety, the rebel who wants wild freedom, the mystic who longs for transcendence, all of them have a seat at your inner table. And when you stop trying to fix yourself and start listening, something shifts. Suddenly, life stops feeling like a constant tug of war and starts feeling like a sacred dialogue. Wholeness isn't about being perfect. It's about being complete, contradictions and all. In practice, this work is deeply intimate. It might look like shadow journaling, where you write down every uncomfortable emotion and trace its roots. Or dream work, where recurring figures offer clues about which archetypes are demanding integration. Reading Jung's Man and His Symbols or Robert A. Johnson's inner work can offer practical tools to navigate this terrain. Meditation, too, not to escape thought, but to witness the dance of inner voices, becomes a daily act of sacred observation. The Lover's card points toward this internal sacred marriage, the alchemical union of masculine and feminine, logic and emotion, conscious and unconscious. When this union happens within, the outer world starts to reflect it. Relationships shift. Decisions become clearer. You begin to live from the center, not the edges. And in that space, love isn't something you seek, it's something you radiate. That's what makes this archetype so potent. It's not just a card about choosing love. It's a card about becoming love. And just when you think the journey ends here, something higher begins to call, a voice that says this inner union is not the destination, but the foundation. Because now that you've seen your inner myth, the question becomes, what will you build with it?